I'm Kiyo, Kubo. I was the founder and CEO of Meridian, and now I run that group within.
You remember me from On Stage E?
Yeah, Airheads.
Okay. Yeah. There you go. So I always give some forward whatever technology demo of some kind at that. So I thought, unless you guys have some specific questions as I go, you just sort of blurt them out whenever. I'm happy to answer anything that you guys want to know about. As it relates to this stuff, at least. I thought I would go through and show you guys how we, kind of what the Meridian Backend looks like, and then how we utilize that to set up location awareness on device, and then ultimately provide that out to users within their apps via the SDK or via the white label solution. So does that sound good to everyone?
Perfect.
All right, so let me see here. I'm going to start like from nothing, just to sort of give you guys a sense of going from zero to app. So I've created, this morning I just created an account for Wireless Field Day, and it's a cloud-based, Meridian is a cloud-based solution, and that got spun up here. So this is just the empty account that we're looking at here. That just is the default when you click add location. And it basically takes you to a page like this, which has a bunch of stuff here. The tool actually allows you to create an entire app that you could actually deploy if you wanted to. So we have a number of customers who use this tool to actually create their entire app and then put it into the app stores. So just to give you a quick example of what that looks like, you can just grab an image and drop it into this little field here, and it'll add it to your app, and then you can add in some links and some items onto this homepage, and it'll just basically build out the app as you go. So I just added that, and this is now here. So you could say something like order food, for example, and then it'll add this this link down here. You can change the way that this looks, and you can do a bunch of different stuff with it. I'm just going to kind of leave it kind of alone for now, and move on to the next part of it, which is the maps. So again, this tool that we're looking at here is used to create. It's sort of the base editor for if you want to create anything location aware, but also, like I said, people use it to create entire apps. So you can see right here, this is kind of the app getting made. But I'm going to move it on to the location awareness part. So when you first come in here, you're going to see this maps section, and there's nothing here. So there's actually a lot of different features you can add to this. I'm just going to go ahead and keep it simple. I'll add a new map, and I have a map. I just happen to have one here. I'll add this one just to sort of show you what it looks like, and I'll give it a name. We'll call it the 300 level, because that's what it is. And then I'll add one more that is the level that we're currently on, which is the 600 level. I'll grab that one and drop it in. Okay, so now we have a couple maps, and if we look in our list, I can click on the 300 level, and you'll see the map here. So this is an SVG. That we basically take the CAD drawings and we turn them into these sort of mobile-friendly SVGs that have a little extra data, but it allows us to support sort of infinite zooming. It's all vector-based. We can do kind of whatever. When you're actually looking at it on the phone, it's got texture, so all the grass is grass and so forth.
Now these maps, because this is something I was in the training class last week for us. They're saying that this is something that you guys need to do, and only you can create those maps right now. Is that correct? And what's the reasoning behind that? So if I have a marketing team or a media team that is capable of creating SVGs and being able to do these, to what the standard would be, because I know it's to make sure that you don't have a fire escape plan that's used as your maps. Mm-hmm. You want something that looks nice, but is there going to be a plan to open it up if it is just locked down to you guys now? Yeah,
so we sort of we kind of debate this a little bit, because it's like I can give you all the rope you need.
I can hang myself if I want to.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not going to hold the chair for you or anything. Like, you just here's your rope. And that's kind of the debate. It's sort of ease of use versus sort of open open, like just to do whatever. And we've actually started giving the ability to people to do this themselves, and we've been documenting the crap out of it to make it sort of more sort of consumable.
So like as a partner or something, I could say, give me that sidebar that says, that admin only section there that lets you load up the map. I could say I'd like to have that on my account, and then I'd be able to have that ability.
Yeah.
Cool.
We're starting to do that more and more, to be honest. There's actually a lot of interesting things to it, and you can kind of go there's sort of a broad swath of what you could do. We could, like, for example, just say, here you go, good luck. We're kind of going that direction. We're actually adding all the sort of verification tools, and so it's like, hey, this isn't valid for some reason. We're obviously adding lots and lots of documentation. But there are actually interesting things you can do if, like, for example, we could help you create a map. So like I was just talking to a convention or a convention hall that wants to have. So with this tool, it's very easy. For example, I can just click in this little place mark, drop it right here, give it a name. What if this is hot dog stand, make it a cafe, for example, and save it. And now this is part of the app, right? And that's where it is. And if I click, where's the hot dog stand, it'll actually take me to this location. And it shows up with text and everything in the app. And so this is all very manageable, and users can manipulate this, drag it wherever it goes, and play with this all day. To your question, like, the vector underneath is less editable, but it turns out that there are actually ways that you can build into. So going back to this example with this convention center, you can actually build into the vector some tool, some sort of triggers, I guess. And so with this, what we're looking at here, this is actually our standard SVG format, but then it's got some extra stuff in it. You can see it's got like logos and all these things that are kind of specially colored. And so we have this, which is open to you as well, this advanced map setting. All this is open, and you can sort of choose stuff, and it'll automatically kind of change the colors for you. That's all very, very simple. And then we have this kind of more advanced style down here. So you could take it, I guess, one step in the middle, which would be like, okay, here's the vector, and we've added layers that you can make available to your facilities department or your events department, and then they know how to come in here and say, okay, we're going to name it. We named them things like Accent 6, 7, 8, but you could actually name it like main floor plan, WrestleMania floor plan, Monster Truck floor plan, and then allow them to just like turn them on and off.
Well, different seating arrangements.
Yeah,
for concerts.
Exactly. Yeah, you could use like the same SVG and I'll just give them access to this to turn on and off stuff if you wanted to. But right now and you can see it's all right there, and it's pretty sort of self-documenting. It's just standard. But the easier way to do it would be to just have lots of different SVGs. So yeah, we're actually looking at that as a sort of a more providing you with more rope, basically.
Okay.
So at any rate, getting back to this. Okay, so these are I just dropped in 2 maps, and I dropped in the 300 level really just to kind of show kind of some of the textures and how you can make it a little bit more interesting. And this is pretty blank looking right now because the only thing that's really visible here, and I guess I should add, it's matching the color palette of the physical signage. So if you walk around, you'll notice this looks basically the same. But then when you fill it out, all this starts to get really detailed and rich, right? Because you add in all your different food places and your restrooms and all this kind of stuff. And they manage all that just by dropping in these pins, just like this. So I could make a men's restroom and place it right here, for example, and now I would have a restroom there. So that's how you create just generic data like place marks. There's also this concept of routes. So routes are how you get from point A to point B, right? So you need to have these in order to give people directions. You don't have to create all of the routes between point A and B and A and C and A and D. You just have to create basically the roads, right? So once you've created the roads, the system will take care of everything else. And the roads themselves can have lots and lots of attributes. So I can put in just a generic road that goes, from here to here to here, and kind of bring it around. And now basically anything between here and here, I could ask for directions and it would know how to take me there. And these can actually have lots of other things. So you could have it a preferred segment, or you could have it a non-accessible segment, and that's kind of how you demarcate, handicap accessible, or you can use these things for making one-way paths. We have these things called portals. I'll show you that real quick. So I'll just, this is all going to be kind of fake, but we'll just kind of drop it in here to show it to you. So this is the routes, and again, you just sort of draw the routes in like this, and now we're done. Now I can basically go from this location all the way back to my my stand there. Additionally, you have these things called portals. So portals are basically how you get between maps. So I wanted to have two maps because now I can drop in a second portal that will be an elevator. We'll call it the West Central Elevator. And then you can apply things like fixed seconds versus per floor seconds. These kinds of things are really useful when you're talking about like a hospital, right? So to go from floor 1 to floor 2, it's actually faster to just take the stairs than it is to take the elevator, because it takes 30 seconds to wait for the elevator. You can also mark it as accessible and all of these things. So I'm just going to go ahead and save that elevator. I'm going to come back to here, look at our 600 level. And then I'm going to drop in, I'm going to drop in a route here to go basically from where we are over to this here. And then you can basically mark it with this West Central Elevator. So now what we've done is we've created a way, actually I got to do it on the other map too, sorry. I've created a way to basically connect these two maps. Does that make sense to everyone? Mm-hmm. Right. So you can actually connect all of the floors to one elevator, and then it knows how to get you from one location to another. So that's sort of the portal thing. And now if I were to open it up on the app, I can actually do a search for that hot dog stand, figure out where I'm at, and then it'll take me there. But so this is where it gets kind of interesting. And again, these are the tools that we provide everybody to create their applications and their mapping and their routing and all that good stuff. And then people who want to use the entire set of tools will use, for example, Pages to create, very detailed lists of, all the different food, or you can create really detailed applications actually using all these tools. But I wanted to talk about the beacons a little bit. So I'm going to switch over from this thing to this thing. If I can.
How long does it take to get a map turned around? Whereas if I were to send in a graphic, and once you guys go through and you process the floor plan or whatever, how long does that generally take?
It doesn't take very long at all. I believe we officially say 1 week is I believe what we officially say, but it doesn't typically.
It's been like no more than 2 days every time I've done it so far.
Really?
Yeah, it's pretty quick, and it's only 2 days because of the queue. I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty quick.
They said it's connected, but maybe because yours is still connected.
Let me start it off, I guess.
Is there any alignment points that you needed to set up, or is that taken care of whenever we send the images to you?
There is actually. I can show you that. It's not. You don't have to use it for like. It'll just work right out of the box. But we provide things like we'll tell you how long it will take to get between certain distances, and so the best practices is to set a. I'll show it to you. Basically, it's Google Maps. And then the CAD drawing is sort of sitting next to each other, and you just say top left, lower right, and it just kind of maps everything. Okay, so I wanted to bring this guy up to show you the setup of the actual beacons. So this is our beacons app. Let me get rid of this thing. So this is actually how you lay out all of the beacons. And I don't know how much you guys know about the beacons themselves, but the reason why we ended up making hardware was the purpose for these beacons. The original purpose that we had was location. I actually be able to calculate where you are, right? Put a blue dot on a map. Not what pretty much everyone else is doing, which is what I would call proximity, right? This is like you walk into a store and you get like some kind of advertisement or something. And when you want to do a proximity-based message, you don't actually have to chirp very often, right? You can chirp once a second, and when my device comes within range of it, it'll trigger something. But if you want to actually do location, you actually have to chirp a lot with these things in order to be able to calculate a good, accurate location. So we need to have kind of specialized hardware that had a really good battery life, and in order to accomplish that. So we ended up building this hardware. And we deployed it actually down here. The very first place we ever deployed is just literally right underneath that sign you can see right out here. And there's a bunch of poles there, and I stuck 20 of them up onto the poles, and I walked around, and I was pleasantly surprised, I guess, by how well it worked. And then I thought, okay, this can be better. Let me make a couple of tweaks to this. And I started walking to each one and connecting to it and making changes to it. And that's when I sort of realized that, it makes sense that we're part of Aruba networks, because we can now, we need those networks in order to actually manage these things, because they're just dumb little pucks of plastic, and if you want to make a change to it, walking up to it with my phone is not a good solution at all. And it was, I say, sort of, yeah, and so it actually becomes even more important when you start thinking about the future, like the Google Eddystone thing, for example, right? They just announced this thing a couple weeks ago. They announced another thing about 6 months ago. There was this Weave thing that just got opened by Nest, and we think that might be interesting. Anyway, there's a lot of interesting things that are happening in this space, and in order to support them, you have to upgrade the firmware, right? Because they know how to speak what they know how to speak, and that is what's invented today. But as new things come along, we need to manage these. And probably the most painful thing I ever did was walk to those 20 and actually upgrade the firmware, because it takes a couple minutes for every single one, right? So you walk to the first one and you stand there and you just kind of wait for it to upgrade. And so what we immediately started working on was how do we do this at great scale? And so we actually added the USB ones, which I don't know if you guys have seen those, that go into the APs, and then obviously all of our new stuff has Bluetooth as well. And so that allows us to not just monitor the Bluetooth network, but actually manage it, right? So I can look at this one and say, that one is running this version of the firmware, and I want it to be running that version of the firmware, and I click a button. Or not even that one, but like everything, all 500,000 of them need to be upgraded. I hit the button, and they all get upgraded, right?
So just to
No, there's 2,000 here.
just to clarify what you're saying there, so you're using the Bluetooth radio within the APs to manage these that you've deployed.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah, exactly. So it's not just like hearing it. It's actually Bluetooth. It's a Bluetooth radio. It's a real Bluetooth radio. So we can.
And how does it communicate with the other beacons that are further away from it? So say you have one access point with a beacon, USB dongle, whatever it is, and then you have two more that are on the side. How do those communicate back to get their firmware updates?
So the deployment actually is such that what we found is that the range of these is far enough that a normal wireless deployment you'll have one of these close enough to it to manage it, pretty much.
And it's all done always. Bluetooth to Bluetooth from beacon to beacon, or is it Wi-Fi?
It's like my cloud to, well, actually it works the other way around. So the AP reaches out to our cloud and says, hey, you got anything for me? You have any upgrades, any configuration changes, anything like that? And then our cloud says, these are the changes I want you to push down the basically the HTTP get and sort of response. And then it takes that and then it pushes from the access point to the Bluetooth radio to
the other beacons.
Bluetooth beacons, yeah, exactly. We actually do have a feature where they can talk to each other. And we built that very, very, very early on because we thought that was going to be important, the sort of mesh concept. But it is so bad on the battery life that we just, and we realize that we have the network that is ubiquitous as well, so let's just use that.
Interesting.
Right? We have the capability, like for example, I can actually come in here and hit a button, and it'll turn off all the Bluetooth beacons that are around me, and then they will tell all the Bluetooth beacons around them, and so on and so forth. So I can actually just turn the entire thing off just from right here, just hit a button. But that is so bad on the battery life that we have sort of gone away from that as an option, because we know we have the network as well. The other problem with it is that I hit that off button, and then it kind of happens, and then I'm like, okay, now turn back on, and I'm like, oh, like I don't know if it happened, right? Unless I have the network that can actually hear everything. So we invested a lot in making sure that we could not only that, these are actually really critical, because it turns out your access points aren't in the places that you need them to be necessarily. But they're such a tiny part of the story that they're just, these by themselves just really, you're a long way away from being able to do anything very useful. And actually, this is a good example of it. So I just loaded up my account here, and you can see I have the 2 places here, and we are in this little tiny conference room all the way down here. There we are. Okay, so the way that this works is I basically grab a beacon and I just hold it next to the thing, and then I click this little button in the upper right hand corner. This beacon right here, or that button right there, and it's going to scan and find all the beacons that are around me, and it's going to basically be the one at the top of the list because it's the one that I'm holding next to it. And then I just take it, grab it, and we'll just put it over here in the corner like that. And then it says, okay, is this a location beacon or a proximity beacon? I'm going to use it for location. I click save, and then what it's doing right now is it's configuring this beacon, and it's also sending all that data out to our cloud, and the two are sort of keeping in sync and sort of figuring out what the other one's doing. So as soon as I do that, it basically throws my blue dot on, and there it is, right? So now we have location with just the one beacon. Now, obviously, that's not terribly accurate, because if I'm standing over here, or if I'm standing over here, it's in the same exact space, right? Because it's just the one beacon. So then you take a second beacon, and we can put this where it actually goes, which is over
Where
here.
you want it?
Just put it in the back corner there, just anywhere. And then I can take a second beacon, same exact process. Just hold it up next to the thing. The MAC address is printed on the side. That's why I keep verifying. It's the same one right there. Drag it there, drop it onto your map, save it as a location beacon. We'll just set it right there. It's configuring it. Obviously, I don't have to keep holding it right next to it, and that's it. So now we have 2 of them, and this is going to be very crude location, right? Because it's just the 2. But you can see it's now putting me sort of in between the 2 of them. And if I go closer to this one, it's going to move me closer to this one in the corner up here. And then when I walk back over here, this is why I wanted an Apple TV. You'll see that it's going to move me back over here, right? So we're able to get this, and you can see this whole room is only like 10 meters long, right? So we're actually getting really good accuracy with just the 2 beacons in literally like 30 seconds. I set this whole thing up.
So what security is in place so that I don't walk up to that beacon with my phone and do the same thing you just did?
So there's so it's all based on your login. So I didn't show it, but I actually had to log into this app in order to have access to this this location and these beacons and everything. Like everything's managed by the cloud.
And the beacons are tied into that login?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Just curious.
In theory, if somebody, because I know somebody who has done this, has sniffed the beacons, got the UDID information that you hide from us because you're doing it in that configuration process, is setting the UDID based off of your app maker account and everything.
Yeah.
You could get that information and you could reprogram one of these beacons. The question though comes down to, because this came up in the class too, this whole security question about, where's the importance of security on here? Is there a need for security? Does it matter?
Yeah.
And really it came down to is, why are you really truly trying to do something to that beacon? You could screw up location, which...
Well, and a real world example is like, say I'm working on a museum right now, and this is exactly what I'm doing is I'm waiting on my shipment of these to come in, and we're going to install them all over the museum. What happens in 2 years when the museum has a better offer from another service provider who wants to come in and do something, and they want to go in and they want to reprogram the beacons and repurpose them, but I don't want to give them the username and password for it, for example. Then they can go in, they want to leverage the infrastructure that they have. You know, maybe not from a security standpoint, but I mean, there's definitely a security implication there where I could walk down there, you know, and grab it, do a sniff, find the Mac.
Well, so here,
I'm just curious. I don't know
yeah. No, so there's actually a couple things going on. So the advertisements themselves, like you said, or maybe you said, everything's in the clear, right? It's just saying, this guy is saying three things primarily. He's saying his UUID, his ID, his major, and his minor. That's what he's saying. And the UUID is hidden, but it's not it's more that it's not so much that we're hiding it as much as it's like it doesn't matter to you.
Right. I was just saying that you're hiding it in terms of the configuration, because a lot of the other vendor solutions, you know, you see what that string is and you could actually set it to what you want, so then you could use it in your app. But your whole purpose is ease of use and making it work by not showing us what that information is, which is fine. So don't get me wrong there.
Yeah. It's not like it's some sort of secret string. It's totally whatever. It's really that again. I think really it goes back to that statement I made earlier about sort of the whole solution as opposed to just this.
Yep.
If I just give you that, then I got to give you all the little things to nibble and mess with it or whatever. But if I give you like a thing that just kind of works, then you don't need to worry about any of that stuff. And the other beautiful part of it is that I can actually start to do really interesting things. So the biggest security risk that we've seen so far is in we're working with a couple of giant retail customers, and they're like utterly terrified that Amazon is going to sniff all their things and then put all those into their app, right? So now I walk into the electronics department and the Amazon app pops up and says, hey, great deal on TVs, right? And that's the biggest security risk that and then also there's some ClearPath stuff that we can do as well, and that's potentially secure. We're actually planning on using all this stuff for entry into the building next when we deploy our new building. So there's those kinds of things that are obviously security risks as well.
Yeah.
And so the way that we're mitigating that is, again, these are all just wide open, just the stuff is in the air. It's all per the spec. It kind of has to be, because the phone has to be able to basically wake up. And so the security that we are employing is actually just rotating these IDs. Right, so they just change, right? So if you have, and you know, most people are doing this, but we can do it in a way that is utterly battery free. Like, it doesn't have any impact on the battery, because it's much less. It doesn't need to be as sophisticated, because again, we have the network. So what that means is that basically can he's chirping 1 right now, and then 5 minutes from now, he can be chirping 33, and all of our stuff will know that, and it'll be able to make changes accordingly.
Are you changing the UUID or just the major minors?
We can change anything. We're changing the major minors primarily, but we can change anything. And the network hears this stuff, and then it's able to propagate it back down to the device. So when I walk into some store and I hear all these UUIDs and all these majors and all these minors, they don't mean anything, right? Because there's something different than when my Amazon people walked through and sniffed them all last week. They're all totally different now, right? So they don't mean anything. So that's sort of the biggest security risk. And then the other thing, if you were to actually connect to that, it kind of also doesn't matter, because when I hear these, and I can show you an example here. I'll switch over to Levi's. Let me just open up the Levi's app. And I know you have a question, so just give me one. Just let me finish this.
Do you connect the Apple TV?
Do Apple TV. Okay. So let me go back to my location. So this is going to use obviously the real location. If I delete this, show beacon signals. So in this particular location, it actually doesn't have very many to work with. In fact, we didn't cover this space at all, because it's not a space that you need to cover. But you can see it's got a number of different ones that it's hearing. In this case, it looks like 5 different ones. But so generally, it's hearing 20 or 30 of them. And so if somebody were to hack one or whatever and do whatever they wanted to do to it, it kind of wouldn't matter to us at all, right? And what's very important is that because we have this network, which is very secure, it will hear that something has happened to that one, and it'll just rewrite it. It'll just fix it, basically. So if you were to connect to that nefariously and reprogram it with whatever it is that you wanted it to do, within a couple minutes it would be kicked back to what it should be. So it's not really an issue. So on either side of it, there's not really too much concern. you were going to ask something.
Yeah, all this is great, but what about? But you still can't use these apps for things like ADA services or even public safety services, because all I'm going to do is run out in the stadium and I'm going to spoof one of your existing beacons, and I'm going to do a denial of service attack on your application. Right? If I start spoofing your beacons, and I'm sitting next to somebody who's relying on those beacons to say this is where I'm at in the environment, and pathing out, for example, right, from an ADA perspective, let's go there, right?
So let's just say you're a terrible, terrible human being for trying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
But
Go
ahead.
About a bank or public safety, whatever, right? So I say, hey, you know what? I'm gonna take my device and I'm gonna reprogram it. I'm gonna make it look like a beacon that's on the other side of the stadium.
Yeah.
And then your map is gonna say erroneously, no, you're over here, and your path is somewhere entirely different, right?
Right.
The inherent lack of security, it just is way disturbing.
No, so what I'm saying, what I was just saying is that we actually, the IDs of these things change randomly, right? So you may hear my beacon, spoof it, but like tomorrow, it won't mean anything. Or you can sort of
a long
change.
time.
Tomorrow's a long time, yeah.
You can change that. I mean, right now we're just looking at sort of the one that we're most concerned about, I guess I should say, is that the one with the electronics department. But you can, I mean, there's no inherent reason why we couldn't change it every 30 seconds, right? Because like I said, we have the network that hears it and then pushes it to our cloud. So when you listen to my thing and then you rebroadcast it, when my device hears it, it'll be like, that means nothing to me. That's nothing. That beacon is nothing, right? Because they're constantly changing, and it's checking with the cloud to see what those things are, right? So it is actually very secure, right? Because your spoofed beacon doesn't mean anything. You know, whatever the parameters are. Again, this feature, this security feature. If you guys look in right now, we don't have that security feature turned on, but that right now we're just thinking about 24 hours. But
I mean, again, I guess conceptually, though, I still envision, even at a 30-second change, it ought to be relatively simple to sniff something as you're walking past, or sniff something from across the other side of the stadium and say, I can hear you with a high gain directional antenna or something along those lines. And
but you hear it, and then it means nothing 30 seconds later. So
right, but I can do that over and over again, right? As many times as you can change it, I can sniff it and replicate it.
He said it can hear like 20 at a time, and if
I
you're
mean,
going to spoof all 20 of those,
so there's
why not? If I'm being nefarious, or
so there are actually.
I'm trying to be a dead horse. I'm just saying that, banking for me, it's imagine a banking deal where you walk in and you've got beacons set up to do whatever it is, location services or how long someone's waiting in line or whatnot. Yeah. And I figure out that if I sit across the street and I do the same thing and I hijack the app or I do something different with it, it's just that ability to do it. I think the thing that gives me a little bit of solace is that if you take the MAC addresses or the beacon IDs or whatever it is, and you only associate them with the account that they're supposed to be with, like if this beacon is registered to me, then that's great. Then it should always be registered to me, and then I can transfer that. But like I think about the ones downstairs. If I just go steal those, and I set them up at my kid's baseball park across town, people are gonna be like, "Oh man, look, something came up from the Levi's Stadium. This is cool." And now I've done some pretty crazy stuff with that.
Yeah,
it's just
So we actually
I'm not trying to derail the conversation. It just the security side of it kind of.
Yeah, there is actually a
Kiyo, would it be fair to say that we're sharing one security technique with you today, but we have a whole roadmap?
Yeah, there was one other. There's a couple other things that I don't really want to talk about.
Cool. Yeah, we can move on.
And the other thing is, from a signal perspective, it's virtually impossible to pick these things up beyond maybe 60 feet. So you actually, if you were going to mount an attack like that, you actually have to physically expose yourself to surveillance and other types of things, as opposed to a remote attack. So there are maybe some other aspects to it that are inhibiting. But we have a lot of other stuff on the.
Yeah,
it opens up new opportunity.
I think that there's so far, right. This is a very nascent sort of market, right? So people are doing all kinds of interesting things with it. I guess my point would be that, like Chuck said, there are some things that we're doing that are very unique to our setup with the network. So I can't really talk too much more about it than that. But it will be. it's going to be insanely secure. But it's not something that we're too terribly concerned about right now, because the purposes are primarily that we're deploying today, I guess I should say, before this next release, are things like wayfinding to find your beer, or find your gate, or those kinds of things. We're not there. We don't have. There are people testing, but we don't have a lot of people who are actually deploying sort of life-threatening things today.
Is there support for other beacons other than these beacons in the app or in the ecosystem? Like, can I use Estimote or whoever else that's out there?
So here's the interesting. So the interesting thing about that question is that everyone has their own sort of, firmware support, connectivity, whatever, and everyone's is their own thing. So there isn't really a standard for, like, there's no like OAuth login for beacons. So we don't support anything else because everyone's got their own little silo of whatever.
Well, plus, I was going to say, I think you're starting to understand why it makes sense for an enterprise vendor to actually provide these products. There's over 1,200 of these beacons in Levi Stadium. And it's just, unless you can provide some of the ancillary services that Kiyo's talking about,
and security,
it's just not manageable, right?
Okay, yeah, I can move pretty quick. So there's, let's see here. Let me just go back here real quick.
I know I couldn't find it.
Okay, so at this point you can see my blue dot being calculated with these two. There are a couple of interesting new things that we're also adding. I don't know if you can see this really well, but the dot has gotten darker as it's been sitting here, and it's not really moving around much. We're starting to use things like the accelerometer and other sort of sensors to check where you are. So if I go like this, you see it'll get light like this because it thinks I'm walking sort of violently around. And so so you'll see we've started sort of incorporating more and more data to start making that location accuracy even more accurate. So like you say, right now it's basically exactly where it is. So let's see here.
Are there techniques that you can use to improve the I know it's pretty good now, the location that it's got of you. I can still see it's a little bit off, but not really that bad. But if somebody wants really, really exact things in, say, a room of this size, will more beacons help with that location?
It will, yeah. So you can add more beacons. That tends to help, get better accuracy. We don't really focus on use cases that require better than 2 or 3 meter accuracy, just because it's just not. I don't know. If you look at the overall market, it's not sort of worth it. But we this is sort of the accuracy that we expect. But yeah, you can add more beacons. There's also things that we do. For example, when you're getting directions. So if you get directions in your Google Maps and say, okay, take me to San Francisco, it'll actually snap you to the road. And if it tells you to get off at this exit and you keep driving, you'll see your little blue dot get off at the exit, even if you keep going straight. We're doing that same thing, right? So if you are in a grocery store, for example, and we have all the route lines, right? Because that's what I was just drawing a moment ago. So we can actually snap you to those, and that improves accuracy. We actually also use GPS data, and you can blend the two of them very seamlessly. So if you're at Levi's, actually, when you're out in a parking lot, is using GPS. When you pass over a certain location, we start to move over to BLE. And so we use lots of data like that, but there's a bunch of different techniques that can be used. Right now we're primarily using GPS, Bluetooth, line snapping, and motion, the accelerometer support, and the RSSI stuff from so those are sort of 4 or 5 different techniques are all being combined.
Have you had anybody approach you for doing this sort of thing in a really in kind of an outdoor situation rather than an indoor situation where they've got a big field or something and they want to have a little directionality around that?
So the one thing I would note is that if you have like a giant open space, like Chuck was saying, the range of these is not is not huge, right? So you can't, if you're standing in the middle of the field, the location accuracy is terrible because the nearest beacon to you is like 50 yards away. So it'll actually still put you somewhere, but it's not super great. So we do outdoor stuff all the time, but you do have to mount the beacons to something so that they're within range, and then we can tell you where you are. But yeah, we actually have this stadium is half outdoor, right? So all the
So like the parking lot, would you put beacons out there, or just always rely on GPS in that kind of situation?
So it depends, and there are actually parking garages that we've done with beacons. Parking lots, it's actually honestly like I don't want to sell you something you don't need.
Right.
So if GPS is going to work fine, you should just use GPS, right? But yeah, we've done parking garages because GPS doesn't work in those. We've done lots of different outdoor spaces.
But again, part of the value of the application is that it will switch from one mode to the next without you having to do anything, right? So there's a nice level of abstraction that's provided by the technology.
So 2 questions, and they're probably coming up. One is once it's all said and done and you've drag and dropped your map and put the beacons and all that stuff, and you package this thing, is it packaged as a web application? Is it packaged as its own standalone application? How is it, number one, how is it packaged? And number two, this is, I don't remember the way that you named it, but there's 2 separate types of beacons. There's location beacons and there's proximity beacons. On the proximity side, what type of analytics are there on the back end so that you can see, for example, how many devices are in a specific area, how long they stay, any analytics like that?
Yeah, I can show you all that. So
I just don't want to run out of time.
yeah, that's a good point. So the from a analytics perspective, let me just switch over there actually. So the app is actually delivered. Actually, I'll show you a couple.
And I'm not trying to cut it short and jump in front of anyone if you guys want to see the rest of it. Those are 2 things that I'd like to see.
Yeah, I'll show you. So the app is delivered as the content is all delivered as an application.
Okay.
So Bluetooth, you can't really use it unless you're in an app, right? It has to be a native app. So websites don't use it. So it's delivered as an application, and there's sort of 2 ways that we do that. One is as let's call it a white label application. So that's where we take this editor content, bundle it all up, submit it to the app stores, take care of it for you. You don't have to worry about anything. The other way is via the SDK. So if you look at, like for example here, this is the University of Oklahoma's library system uses it, and this is all built. Actually, no, this isn't the right one. Where's the nav app? Here it is. If you look at their app, this is all built using the tool. This might look a little familiar that I was just showing you. So they built everything here with the web editor, and then we bundled that up, turned it into an app, and then submitted it to the App Store. So there was no programming done to create this.
When you submit it to the App Store, can you sell it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You do whatever you want to.
Okay.
Yeah. It's we're just submitting. It's your stuff. We're just submitting it for you.
So you
I just don't know how that
set
process
up the developer account and everything else that's needed to submit it to the App Store, so the customer doesn't really need to do that.
Yeah. Well, typically we don't want to submit with our account. We can't submit with your account. So if we need to, we'll help you set up your whole account and everything. But typically people have some account, and then we just use those credentials and then submit it. So this one I think was probably submitted with the OU App Store account. Just from a pure usability perspective, it's almost always better to submit under the brand of the end customer, as opposed to just like, because people are searching for stuff, right? And when they come across the OU Libraries app and it's got some random app developer, and then they come across something from OU, you think, okay, I don't know what that one is, but that one is the one I want, right? So it tends to be better to submit with the actual account. But so that's sort of the app maker way, and so you can see in here I can look at different stuff, and this is all using the app viewer tools. So I can come into art and look this up, and so this is all built in. Everything you're seeing here is basically just built in. They just used the tool, created this app that we're looking at right here. So I can say, okay, this is what I was looking for. I could just do a search for it. I have no idea what's in here, but so I search for whatever I'm looking for. It gives me the information, and then I can just say directions to here. Now, if we were actually there, it would know where I was, but we're here, so
It's gonna be a long walk.
yeah, it's going to be a long. I have no idea. I'll just Atom Center. So then it's going to calculate the directions, and actually, right here would be using GPS because we're outdoor, and you see your little blue dot moving down the thing, and you can see all the way to the library. And again, this would all be using GPS because it's outside, takes you in whichever door is the appropriate door. And now we're inside, and it's going to take me to the deck. Yeah, so there it is right there. So that's sort of an example. So this is, and I can turn on the accessible route if I wanted to, and it would take a different route if it needed to. So this is the app viewer sort of method, or you can go the other route, which is like Levi's did, which is this is clearly their app, right? So they hired an application development team, in this case, it's a company called Venue Next, and they build these kinds of applications. And then all of our stuff powers anything location in this application. So anytime they need location, they ask and we tell them, where are you? If in the most obvious incarnation is right here, right, with the map. When I click on that, it's going to load up where we are. There we are in our conference room. But if I go to here and I say, express pickup, it actually is using location here too, and you'll see in this, it's actually sorted by how far away each one of them is, right? And it's kind of an important feature, it turns out, because there's actually a lot of Frank's places, and if I just come in here and I just, if it's not sorted by anything meaningful, and I just kind of click on, the whichever random one, it can take me a long time to get there during a game. So basically, any time they have location needs, they ask us, and we provide that. So we provide basically this SDK that provides navigation, directions, notifications, location, and they use all of the mapping, routing, all that stuff in their app that they submit to the App Store. Pretty awesome.
What would warrant sorry, Lee.
Okay.
Can I go or you want to go?
Go.
What would require a new bundle be submitted to the App Store? If I go in and I create a new page, is that an HTML pull when the app launches, or is that actually built in the app? So then, if I'm going to add a fall discount page or something, do I need to time that accordingly for the 2-week review time to get in, or
no? So the app is like you can think of it kind of like a browser, I guess. It's all native, so it's not showing HTML content necessarily. It will show HTML content, but it's all driven by data that's coming out of the cloud. So if I make a change in the cloud, it's going to change in the app. So you could submit to the app to the App Store with like 4 pages, and then it would go in there. And you could, if you were under a tight timeline, which we have customers who are like, I have a hospital opening in 2 weeks. Can you have an app? And we're like, yes, we'll submit the app today, and then we'll build out the app in the next 2 weeks.
okay?
And that's totally doable. Yeah, you just create everything you create in here is live in the app when you.
Is there? Well, go ahead. You were.
Thank you. So in this case, right, just playing on the Packers and 49ers thing, if you wanted to send Packers fans, and I don't want to say into a broom closet, but if you wanted to take 2 diverse groups from the same app and have them go different places for different reasons, can you get that granular?
Let me think. So technically, yes. There's an API for Give Me Directions.
I mean, it's like a role-based thing is where I'm going. This just happens to be a graphical way of thinking about it.
Yeah, you can. There's an API for directions. So if they wanted to, in their code, when they make that call, they could ask for sort of a different set, I guess.
VIPs or non-VIP, different bars or different levels or whatever. I see what you're saying.
Walk in and say, "Are you a Packers fan?" Packers, and it's like you go a long way.
Yeah,
because what you can do is you can actually tell it to give you directions from anywhere to anywhere just via the API, and it'll return the routes. Generally speaking, we choose wherever you are by default, and then take you the shortest path to whichever place you're going. It is actually interesting. From time to time, you'll be standing at a place like right here, and the place you're asking for is on the other side of the stadium. And so two people will be standing there, one guy over here and one guy over here. It'll technically is shorter for this guy to go that guy and this guy to go this way. So I've seen that before.
By feet, right?
Yeah, by like literally inches.
Isn't there actually effectively they're doing that now, because if you've linked your ticket to the app, then it knows where you are from like a food ordering and so on perspective, so that it's already dynamic in that respect.
It is, yeah, and so it'll figure out where you are seated. And they're actually it's interesting when you flip it on its head. They're doing the food delivery, right? And so when they have an app that uses our same stuff, and you can say, okay, here's your food that you need to deliver, and it's just like everyone's got a different place to go, right? Because everyone's delivering food to a different person. So they're using the same thing on the other side. There's actually a lot of management sort of capabilities that are really interesting that I haven't even showed you here. But I'm going to switch back to the to my laptop.
One more quick question on, let's say in this facility, for example, you have all these beacons that are there, and you have the main app that whoever it is controls all the information about it. If there's a vendor, like let's say this is a shopping center, is there the ability to have hierarchical users in there so that me as a landlord, I could control all the information about my shopping center, but I could give a tenant inside that shopping center with their own beacon the control or the ability to update their own information?
Yeah. So
tenancy again.
Yeah. So there's a couple ways that you could do that with the system the way it's built out right now. We have that's actually one of the very short order. It actually might be in there live right now. I haven't seen it yet, but we're adding user-based permissions, so different users can do different things. And like I said, it might actually be there live now. I haven't looked, but that is something that is sort of fundamental. There also are organizations and then locations within those organizations. So we have a number of people who have like lots and lots of locations, and then they give their managers access to their location
for specials or whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly. And then they have administrative rights to the organization.
But you said it may be in there right now. If not, it should be coming.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know if it is or not.
One of the other projects I'm working on is a showcase for Aruba in our areas. We're setting up a creative arts incubator, and there's 12 different galleries inside that incubator, and I want to give each tenant the ability to go set their calendar and upload their own artwork and do things like that. And I don't want to have to manage it.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm coming from with it. So if that's in there,
I don't know if it doesn't look. I haven't played with it. I honestly, it is something that we're doing. So just
good enough for me.
And then the third thing that you could do is actually we have a concept of sort of third-party pages. There it goes. Yeah, this is the permissions. I haven't actually played with this, but there's these third-party pages where you can actually. They're basically just web pages, and then you can have that in its own world of web pages, and then you can have all that linked to from the app. So the user is just using their app like normal. They think it's just part of the app, but it's actually going to some third-party web page. And we do that right now for stuff like in the Venetian app, they have all their restaurants. It's all in the app, and then they have a link that says make a reservation. When you click it, it actually goes to a plugin, an open table plugin that just lets you.
I just used that app. I didn't know it was yours.
Yeah, that's
it's a good app.
Thank you.
Very well.
While I'm on this page, application tokens is interesting. We have actually integrations with a lot of different applications. People are building this into their core applications. Robin is a good example of that. They're a company that makes conference room booking software, and it all runs off of this. What was I going to show you? Oh yeah, reports. Let me show you reports. I have like 3 minutes, so I don't think this is. Okay, so, I can, by the way, if I come in here and click on beacons, you'll see the ones that we just added, right? So it's all being synchronized here to the cloud. So these are the two that we just dropped in. You can see them showing up here. And then, of course, we don't have a monitor in here, so there's not, these are when I deployed them, but you can click on them, and I can make edits to them, stuff like that. There's a whole campaign thing. I don't think I have time for that. But basically, you can create drop in a proximity notification beacon. I didn't actually do that, I'm sorry. But you can drop in a proximity beacon, and then you can associate a campaign to it. And there's two kinds of campaigns. There's a simple, just, you walk into a space, it pops up on the phone, it says, welcome to wherever, right? The other kind of campaign is, it's a third-party URL campaign. It's like a third-party endpoint campaign. And that's the one that is actually the most interesting, because when we hit that beacon, we'll actually hit our server and pull the data from the phone and then send it off to whatever URL you tell it to. So you could put that URL could be driving a TV, for example, and when I walk into the space, it would detect that it was me and then put my name on that TV and say, Kiyo, welcome to our hospital or whatever.
Now, is it the client making that call?
The client is hearing the beacon. The app doesn't have to be running, by the way. The app is closed or whatever. The client hears the beacon. It makes a call out to our server. Our server then says, "Oh, that beacon is associated with this campaign." When our client makes that call to our server, it includes the device type and my login, my authentication token if I'm logged in, and a number of other items like that. And then our server will make a call out to that server, which will then, resolve my authentication token, realize that it's me, and do whatever it wants to do. But that's really interesting for all kinds of purposes. That's how we're doing door unlock at our facilities. When I get to the door, we're actually using ClearPass for the authentication. So I walk to the door. I just literally just walk to the door. My phone is in my pocket. The app's not running. It makes a call out to our server with my authentication token from ClearPass, which then makes a call out to ClearPass and says, "Is that Kiyo? What is this authentication token?" ClearPass says, "Oh, that's Kiyo. He's allowed in." Goes back to my server in the cloud, which then makes a call to the door unlock server, which unlocks the door basically. So from a user perspective, I just walk, get out of my car and I walk to the door and I just open it and walk in. But all this stuff is, all you literally do is just put in the URL into here, and then it all you got to build those web services. But real quick, let me just show you. I got negative time. I'll show you the reports. So I'll just choose a shorter time frame here,
because that's where the money is for me. All this stuff's great, but unless they can show someone using it and show a report, no one's gonna buy it.
So this is our Portland office. I actually have a report I can show you for here. It has one device, but and it'll show you. There's a ton of data here. How many visitors, how many screen views per visitor. You can see what people do with it. What people are searching for, where they're getting directions to and from. This, I think, is actually the most interesting one, which is the campaigns. And I can break this down by hour. And let me just switch over here.
Wait,
so this is our coffee room in our Portland office. And you can see the number of devices that are coming in at any given hour. So at 6 a.m., between 5 and 6 a.m., there's one device. And then between 6 and 7, there's 16. And so you can sort of see people coming into the office in the morning. And then you can sort of come into the coffee machine, and then there's sort of a lull at lunchtime, and then back up in the afternoon, and then they take off. And then you can also see the how long they spend there. So in the morning, people are there pretty short, 2 minutes, 1 minute, 2 minutes. And then there's this longer one in the evenings. People, I think, are just kind of hanging out there in the evenings. This is interesting. On Friday, you can see it's sort of a much slower arrival at the office on Fridays. But then we have this lunch, and you can see 90 people basically. That's basically everyone in Portland has this. We have a free lunch on Fridays. And so between 12 and 1, basically everyone went to that lunch, and then it really dropped off after that. And then you can also see in terms of how long they spent, an hour and, an hour basically, which is basically all of lunch.
We gotta hurry, or Chuck won't be able to.
Okay. And more crudely, this is we put a beacon in the bathroom to see really low, tight spaces. And so you can see how many people are using basically the bathroom.
Dwell time per stall.
Dwell time.
Right? Well, that's what's interesting is when you come here, you see just a couple devices and sort of how long they're there. And then on a Friday, you got this one device that comes in at 7 a.m. and is there for a good 14 minutes. So it's sort of a... Anyway, so there's lots of really great analytics that are just basically out of the box. They're just delivered as part of the thing.
What's the licensing fee on this normally? I mean, what would it cost as a reseller, what would it cost for me to be involved in this program so that I can build these apps?
So the list price for the service as a whole is I think it's $12,000 for 250,000 square feet of space.
Okay.
So that's sort of the list. And so if you have more than that, obviously, however many of those you have, and then the beacons, I think the list price on one of these is like $70, something like that. And then if you do the SDK, it's all free. And if you have the app viewer, there's some services that are involved there. And in creation of maps, there's some services that are involved there.
Interesting.
And all this stuff is included with all of that.